Hey, it's Caressa.
Hey, it's Maddie.
You're not watching the Disney Channel right now.
You're listening to
Dreadfully Twisted.
Why was I so late on that?
Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza for you and me. Because we got a snowstorm that we didn't know we were going to get.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the Krusty Krab pizza weather outside, unexpectedly.
Yeah. Because it's like so windy. Let me see what the wind is like, because it's like crazy. Like I was just sitting there and then I just heard like stuff hitting the house. And then my dog started barking and I was just like, that's nothing outside.
Yeah.
So the wind right now is 20 miles per hour. That's pretty fast.
That is.
It's supposed to get even windier at like 8 o'clock. Because, like, look. Wind.
Wow.
Ugh. Okay. Well, we are back. Oh my gosh, is this a cat?
No, it's an owl.
Oh, that's so cute. Sorry. I just saw the ears and I was like, what is that? But we are back.
Yes, we are.
This week. Dreadfully Twisted's back again. Dreadfully Twisted's back. Tell your friends, and family. Okay. And then, so there's actually a couple things that I wanted to say. One, we are changing our upload days from Sunday to Monday. So I'm sorry, but that's to give me a little bit more time to edit. Because it just gets tough sometimes trying to get it done before Sunday. So we're going to change that. So I'm sorry that this is like very late notice. Because it's happening. It's happening this week. So. Yeah. So look out for that.
It is okay. I'm sure they won't care.
Yeah. I mean, people, like, podcasts do that all the time, though. Yeah. Like, the one podcast that I listen to, like, they normally would upload on Tuesdays, I think, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or maybe, no, it was Mondays. And then I was like, where is the episode for, like, that week? And I was like, what's going on here? And then, like, whenever the episode came out on Wednesday, they said, oh, yeah, we're changing it from Mondays to Wednesdays. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, okay.
Well, now they could start the week off with Dreadfully Twisted.
Yeah, and that's like even perfect, because like I also feel like Sunday is just like a lot of people probably aren't really listening on Sundays. Yeah. Like I don't listen to podcasts on Sundays. Yeah. So like I feel like it might just be better anyway for But yeah. And the other thing is, so we are doing a story episode today, and on our YouTube somebody left a comment saying that they didn't like our commentary. So I'm not sorry about that. That's the whole point of our podcast, is to talk about stuff. So like if we're reading stories, we are going to be talking about that story and telling you guys what we think and what we liked about it and stuff. So like if you don't like that, I'm sorry, don't listen to those episodes then, because that's what it is. So but yeah, like their comment didn't make sense though.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just being mean. So it's fine.
It's fine.
It will be fine. I think we're hilarious. So
we are.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Well, no, I actually have one more thing to show you or tell you. When Kira and we went to Walmart on February 6th, and this thing freaked us out. I took a video, and it kind of goes fast, so you just gotta. Do you see that?
What is that?
Do you see that?
What is that? What? Oh my god. That's probably... Oh my gosh, that was terrifying.
It was scary, but I think it was just like a decoration. Yeah. They were trying to make it seem scary, but it freaked us out, so we didn't go to Walmart. We ended up going back like an hour later, but like we were like, no. It was scary.
That is scary.
And I was like, my true crime mind thinks that's an actual foot. So the video, we were at Walmart, and you know how like people like do those decorations where they do like creepy things. So this person, they put like what looked like an actual foot hanging outside the trunk with like the trunk closed, and it looked real, but I know it wasn't. But like it freaked us out, so we didn't go.
Also, there's like always stuff happening at that Walmart,
right? And so that's why I was just like
super freaked. I would have been freaked out too.
I was just like, yeah. And so we went to Dollar Tree instead, but then we did end up going back like an hour later, and then we were only in there for like a little bit. But yeah, it was just like, I don't know. Yeah, so that was scary. So yeah, that was like forever ago. I meant to show you that last week, but I forgot. because I forgot. I don't know.
His life.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I took like a video of it and then I just forgot about it. But I think that was it. I did have a couple orbs on my camera.
Yeah.
On the 11th. Actually, a lot. So, yeah.
That one was really big.
Yeah. So, just like, oh my gosh. That happened on the 11th. The 11th was Tuesday. Yeah. So, I started checking my camera again because I was like, I need to... Yeah. Sorry. I got a text message and I was like, what is that? It was that group chat with that lady that I'm a vendor in.
Yeah.
Her shop. And I don't know. Okay. So, let me pull up my stories again because I don't have them up now. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
Good.
Mine are kind of short. Like, the first two that I have are kind of short.
Okay.
So, we're going to start off with this one because this one freaks me out. I don't know if it's, I think you've heard of it. Because, we didn't say we're doing creepypasta stories today.
And, like, creepy Reddit stories.
Yeah. So, this one... I did find it on Reddit, so it is a creepy one, but I found it on, I think, TikTok first, because I saw a video on it. It's the lamp story. Have you heard of that one?
Sounds familiar.
Okay, so, yeah, it's like a glitch in the Matrix kind of one, so we'll get started here. So it's called a parable. That's not even a word. Oh my gosh, I gotta tell you this. So whenever, I can't talk ever. So this is just gonna show how stupid I am sometimes. Whenever I was at that funeral on Thursday, Kira was there, Jackie was there, and Jocelyn was there. But Kira went to the bathroom, and there was like just a one-stall bathroom. So I told her, I was like, oh, I'll stand outside the door so like nobody like walks in on you and be your bodyguard. Yeah. Except for I didn't say bodyguard. I said guard body at first. Then the second time I tried to say it, I said bog bardy. And then the third time I said it was even more wrong. So then I was just like, I can't talk. I can't talk. That was just me.
Oh my god, I love that.
Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Oh, so that was embarrassing. Because then the guy that like opens the door like looked at me, was like staring at me, and I was just like, I'm done. So then I ran into the other room, and then whenever Kira got out, she's like, you guys left. And I was like, sorry. I'm being judged by people I don't know because I can't speak. So hopefully I don't have issues talking. Because I always have issues talking.
Bog Barty. Yes.
I don't know. I was just trying to say bodyguard in my mind. It was like 6:30. It was after work. I was like, I'm tired. Just can't. Okay, so hopefully I won't mess up this time. Okay, so the story. I'm gonna get into it now. A parallel life awoken by a lamp. That's what it's called. My last semester at a certain college, I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note, he was 325 pounds. I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground, I lived a different life. I met a wonderful young lady. Oh my god, that's not what that says. She made my heart skip and my face red. I pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends before I finally won her over. After 2 years, we got married, and almost immediately she bore me a daughter. I had a great job, and my wife didn't have to work outside of the house. When my daughter was 2, my wife, bore me a son. A son was the joy of my life. My son was the joy of my life. I would walk into his room every morning before I left for work and doted on him and my daughter. One day, while sitting on the couch, I noticed that the perspective of the lamp was odd, like inverted. It was 3D, but just wrong. It was a square lamp base, red with gold trim on 4 legs and a white square shade. I was transfixed. I couldn't look away from it. I stayed up all night staring at it. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Something was just not right about that lamp. I stopped eating. I left the couch only to use the bathroom at first. Soon, I stopped that too, as I wasn't eating or drinking, but I stared at that lamp for 3 days before my wife got really worried. She had someone come by and try to talk to me. By this time, my cognizance was breaking up, and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mother's house just before I had my epiphany. The lamp is not real. The house is not real. My wife, my kids, none of that is real. The last 10 years of my life are not real. The lamp started to grow wider and deeper. It was still inverted dimensions. It took up my entire perspective, and all I could see was red. I heard voices, screams, and all kind of weird noises, and I became aware of pain. A lot of pain. The first words I said were, "I'm missing teeth," and I opened my eyes. I was lying on my back on the sidewalk, surrounded by people that I did not know. Lots were freaking out. I was completely confused. At some point, a cop scooped me up and walked me across the sidewalk and grass, and they threw my face down the back of the cop car. I was still confused. I was taken to the hospital by the cop. Seems like he didn't want to wait for the ambulance to arrive to give CT scans and stuff. I went through about 3 years of horror depression. I was grieving the loss of my wife and children and dealing with the knowledge that they never existed. I was scared that I was going insane, and as I would cry myself to sleep, hoping I would see her in my dreams. I never have. But sometimes I see my son, usually just a glimpse out of peripheral vision. He is perpetually 5 years old, and I can never hear what he says. Edit, never thought anyone would read this. I changed the line so that it no longer seems that my 2-year-old daughter bore a child. I have never seen Inception or Star Trek episodes I have never seen Inception or the Star Trek episode so many have mentioned, but I will eventually. I have had PMs describing similar experiences and 3 posters stating such experiences are impossible. I'd say more research needs to be done on brain functions. Pre-med students don't assume you know everything. As a few have asked if I can write a screenplay, stage play, rage comic, etc., please consider this tale open source and have fun with it. So, like, it's just crazy that, like, that glitch in the Matrix was that he was knocked unconscious and literally lived a whole different life.
I know, that is crazy.
Like, that, ever since I heard that story, it freaks me out. So I, like, look at lights and I'm like,
while you were reading it,
you good?
I do remember reading that before.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
And I can't believe, like, other people have had other experiences with it. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't know. It just freaked me out the first time I heard that story.
Okay, this one's a little bit long.
That's okay.
But
is it that one that you sent me?
Yep.
So yeah, you can read the whole thing. It's fine, because that might take up the majority of the episode, and that's fine. I only have 2, so if we just do 2 each, I think that would be good. Because we already like 13 minutes in, so like we should be fine. So if you read the whole thing, it's fine. And if we go over, it's okay.
Yeah. This is literally terrifying. Nightmare fuel.
Yeah, I read that and I was just like, I'm scared now.
Like, just the image in my is like engraved.
I guess I'm a little confused on parts of it, but maybe I'll like hearing again will like make more sense, or we could talk about it after, see what you thought, like what it meant.
Okay, what do you call that? Like the beginning.
That's like the title that you know how like Reddit you could put like what it is at the top or like the name of it. I would just say
the
like
subject of the
yeah.
My wife has been peeking at me from around corners and behind furniture. It's gone from weird to terrifying. Okay.
Can I just say, though, parts of me kind of just want to do this to Jeremy to freak him out.
Oh, God. Have him read this. Actually, like...
What if I just start doing this just to be funny? Like, just for, like, a couple times, and that's it. Sorry.
Do it, and then, like, after he's like, what is going on? Then send it to him. And he's like, oh, that's what's going on. My wife, Lynn, and I have been together for 6 years and married for 11 months. Our entire history together has been very normal, and never once have I noticed any weird behaviors or red flags. I can't stress enough how out of character this whole thing is for her. Lynn is very kind, intelligent, and thoughtful. She's always been the no-nonsense type of person. Being childish or trying to scare me is not something she'd normally do. She doesn't even like watching horror movies. When we first started dating, she agreed to watch The Shining with me because she knew how much I loved horror. She was so scared that she didn't even make it through half of the movie before we had to turn it off. She isn't into anything creepy and has never been into pranks. It's just not her cup of tea, and that's fine, but that's what was so strange about this. It's just so unlike her. I should also add that she never had any mental health issues, and as far as I'm aware, it doesn't run in her family. I know some people are able to hide their mental health problems, but in the 6 years we've been together, I think I'd have seen some sort of sign. Can't talk today. 2 months ago, I was in the kitchen making myself some coffee before work. I was running a bit late that morning and knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Dunkin' Donuts for my usual morning fix. I took a sip of my coffee as I hurried down the hall towards the front door, when I happened to notice Lynn peeking at me from around the corner ahead of me. I could only see her eyes and a strand of her long dark hair hanging against the wall. The rest of her body was concealed behind the corner. I nearly spilled my coffee when I saw her. I did burn the shit out of my lips. Geez, Lynn, I said, wiping a few drops of my coffee from my pants. You scared the shit out of me. She immediately popped out of view like a little kid that had been caught. I heard her scurry off towards the living room, and by the time I got to the front door, she was out of sight. It was really weird, and just totally out of character for her, like I said. But I also found it kind of funny that she was being more playful and a little less serious. I shouted that I loved her and called her a weirdo. As I shut the door behind me, I heard her laughing. Her behavior was a bit odd, but it certainly wasn't something to call a priest over. I forgot about it by lunch, and by the time I got home, she was her normal self. I didn't bring it up, and neither did she, and life went on. The next incident happened 3 days later. It was around 2 a.m., and I had woken up to get a drink. I was standing at the kitchen island, jug of orange juice in hand, when I felt a strong feeling that I was being watched. For whatever reason, I looked down at the floor and saw my wife's smiling face staring back. She was peeking at me from the other side of the island, staring up at me with wide, unblinking eyes and grinning. Grinning like the Cheshire Cat. No, absolutely not. If someone was smiling at me like that, I'd literally, cry.
It's like me smiling at you like this,
Nope.
Freaky.
I screamed, I'll admit it. Not out of irritation, but fear. For some reason, at that moment, I was scared. At the sound of my scream, Lynn scuttled backwards, out of my view, her hands and feet smacking the tile floor as she hurried out of the kitchen on all fours.
No.
No. That's when I just throw the whole wife and house away. No. I didn't run after her or even yell after her. I just stood there frozen in shock, wondering what had possessed her to do that. It took me a little longer than I'd like to admit to go back upstairs, but I eventually did. When I got to our bedroom, Lynn was lying on her side, asleep, or at least pretending to be. I stood there for a while, watching her breathing to be sure she was really asleep. I had the feeling she might jump out at me the moment I got into bed, but she didn't. I climbed into bed and she didn't even move. Her breathing was soft and deep, and I was starting to wonder if I had dreamt the whole thing. The next morning, I waited for her to come down for coffee, and after handing her a mug and kissing her cheek, I decided to ask her about it. What was that about last night? I asked, keeping my tone light so I didn't offend or embarrass her. She frowned over her cup of coffee, shaking her head like she had no clue what I was referring to. You were peeking at me again, from over there, I said, pointing to the spot on the floor by the kitchen island. She followed my gaze, and when she looked back at me, she burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that I couldn't help but join her. You creep me the fuck out sometimes, you know that? I said. She giggled and set her cup of She giggled and set her cup of coffee on the counter and wrapped her arms around my neck. You creep me out all the time, so I guess we're even, she teased. We said our goodbyes and left for work. As I drove, I kept thinking about how creepy it had been seeing her grinning at me from behind the island like that. The sounds her hands made on the floor as she crawled away. I told myself she was just trying to be silly, just trying to join me in my love of all things horror. It's not like I was afraid of her, but it still didn't sit right with me. I started seeing her peeking at me more and more. Sometimes she'd be peeking out from behind the couch or living room curtains. Once she managed to get inside her grandmother's old trunk that sits at the foot of our bed. I might not have even known she was in there at all had the trunk's old hinges not given her away. She'd had the lid propped up just enough so that only half of her face peeked through. She'd been grinning like an excited toddler. It was unnerving. I didn't even know what to say to her. All I could do was stare. When I finally found my voice, I asked her why on earth she was doing this. She didn't answer, but she had slowly closed the lid, shutting herself inside the trunk. I just walked away, feeling disturbed.
So you just lock her in there?
Yeah.
Like you can come out when you stop. I'm just kidding.
I didn't understand why she was doing it, but it clearly made her happy. I just hoped she would tire of the game quickly. Lynn didn't peek at me for the next 2 weeks. I started to think she was done with her weird prank, and I was relieved. We were watching a show on Netflix one night, and I jokingly said I hadn't seen her peeking at me lately, and that she must have given up on her spy game. She looked up at me with a small smile and said, maybe I've just gotten better at it. I didn't say anything, but I wondered whether or not she was joking. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. Was she still peeking at me when I wasn't looking and I just hadn't noticed? And if so, what the hell was she getting out of this? I started to feel paranoid, constantly checking whether she was watching from around the corner or behind a door. I was jumpy whenever I was home and she wasn't in full view of me. I felt stupid and a little crazy. But after a few weeks without another incident, I began to relax. I stopped checking behind furniture and walls and told myself it was just a bad memory. Then a few days ago, things got so much worse. Lynn left to go to a friend's, and I lounged on the couch and played a couple games on my laptop. Around 9 p.m., I hopped in the shower and I was washing soap from my hair. I felt that awful feeling that I was being watched.
This is like my biggest fear.
I know, same. I slowly opened my eyes and almost had a heart attack. Lynn was peeking from behind the shower curtain. Her entire head stretched into the shower, just leaving her body outside. Her dark hair hung against the curtain, the ends dripping with water. Her mouth hung open in a terrible grin, eyes wide and red, as if she hadn't blinked in a while. No, that is literally absolutely terrifying. I screamed and jumped back against the wall. She didn't move, nor did her smile waver. Her makeup ran down her cheeks in 2 black streaks. She looked giddy and completely deranged. I was terrified. We stood like that for a few moments, neither of us saying a word. Finally, after what felt like forever, she slowly pulled her head back out of the shower, and I watched her blurry figure through the curtain as she moved backwards towards the bathroom door. A second later, the bathroom door slammed shut, hard enough to rattle the mirror. I screamed again and jumped out of the shower to lock the door. I stayed inside the bathroom for over an hour. Maybe I overreacted to some of you, but joke or not, I wasn't going to have to put up with that crazy shit anymore. That's what I kept telling myself as I paced in my bathroom, stopping to listen at the door every few minutes. Suddenly, I heard a muffled sound, and I pressed my ear against the bathroom door, straining to listen. I couldn't hear anything, but I envisioned Lynn standing on the other side of the door, giggling at her joke. I felt a surge of anger. I was beyond pissed at being made to feel scared in my own house, and made to hide in the bathroom for an hour. All for what? Some joke? If it was a joke, it was an awful one. What the fuck, Lynn? I snapped. This shit is really getting annoying. I waited for her to apologize or to call me a jerk, but instead I heard a faint moan. So quiet I wondered if I heard it at all, but then complete silence. Lynn, I called out, not able to even hide the shakiness in my voice. I got no response, just my own heavy breathing. I swear to God, just stop it, I yelled, pounding my fist on the door. I waited for her to cuss me out, something I would expect from me talking to her like that. I never screamed at her before, but there was nothing, just the occasional drip from the shower head. I won't deny that I was scared, too afraid to open the door and face my own wife. I waited another 30 minutes or so, which feels like a lifetime when you're scared. Finally, I decided I wasn't going to spend the night hiding in my bathroom. So I got down on my knees and peered under the door. I almost expected to see her face peeking back at me, but thankfully I didn't. I could see straight down the hallway to the top of the stairs, but no Lynn. I didn't know if I should be happy about that or not. I looked for a few minutes, waiting to see her head pop up over the top step, but it never came. I stood up, my hand hovering over the door, and mentally prepared myself to open it. I slowly turned the lock with shaky fingers, and I was about to yank it open when I heard a sound that still makes me feel nauseous when I think about it. A moan, louder than before, but this time I was able to tell just where it was coming from. I turned my head to the closet door, as if in slow motion, and locked eyes with my wife, who was peeking out at me from the slight gap. Her eyes were still wide as ever, and her mouth was hanging open in the most grotesque gaping smile I've ever seen. Shiver me timbers. I didn't even scream. I was too scared for even that. Her hands were clasped to her chest, body trembling with sheer delight as if she could barely contain her excitement. A short, raspy moan bubbled up from her throat, sending a shiver through my entire body. Somehow, I found the ability to pull the bathroom door open and ran as fast as I could, all the way down the steps, snagging my keys and phone from the table in the living room before running outside to my car. I could hear shrill laughter behind me, but I didn't hear her getting closer. I didn't bother shutting the front door. I drove away from the house faster than I legally should have, shivering the entire time, either from fear or the cold, maybe a little of both. I hadn't grabbed a coat or even a pair of shoes. I was still in my boxers and my hair still damp. I drove straight to my brother Chris's house about 40 minutes away, ignoring any and every call and text I got. I didn't check my phone until I was safely parked in my brother's driveway. Lynn had called 4 times and sent a flurry of texts, all wondering where I'd gone and why I left like that. I threw my phone at the dash in a rage, furious at her nonchalant attitude. My brother and his wife were surprised to see me, especially dressed in just a pair of boxers, but told me to stay as long as I needed. Chris lent me some clothes and asked me what happened. I told him Lynn and I had a fight, but didn't get into details. I didn't want him to think I was overreacting, leaving my wife over a prank, even if it was a strange one. I mean, hadn't I encouraged her for years to lighten up instead of being so serious all the time? I wanted her to relax and loosen up, but this was definitely not what I had in mind. I tried to sleep on their sofa, but my brain wouldn't let me sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lynn's face staring at me from inside the closet. Knowing she's been in there with me the entire time made my skin crawl. She'd never left the bathroom at all. Instead, she slipped inside the closet and slammed the bathroom door shut to fool me. The mere thought of going back home gave me anxiety. I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Chris ended up giving me a sleeping pill, so I was able to get some rest. My sleep was filled with terrible dreams, all of Lynn's smiling face. I woke up just as the sun started to rise. My sore body ached from the sofa, and I felt drained. I knew I'd have to call Lynn at some point, but I didn't know what to say to her. I wouldn't be going home unless she gave me her word, and she'd never do any more creepy shit. I just wanted my wife back. Her normal, serious self never looked so good to me. I was contemplating calling her and telling her that when that familiar feeling came over me, I was being watched. I was staring at the ceiling, my heart in my throat. I didn't want to look away, but the longer I ignored the feeling, the worse it got. My eyes drifted away from the ceiling almost on their own. Her face was pressed up against the window beside the couch, staring down at me with that same gaping smile. Drool dribbled down her lips, leaving 2 long streaks down the glass. I didn't know how long she's been there, but something told me she'd been there for quite a while, possibly all night. I didn't bother screaming, though I was afraid anger trumped any fear I felt at that moment. I jumped up from the couch and pounded my palm against the glass. "Lynn, are you crazy? What is wrong with you? Just go home," I shouted. "Now." She didn't move, and her ghastly expression never changed. If anything, her smile only grew, as if she'd never been more elated. I could hear Chris and his wife moving around upstairs, as if Lynn could hear them from her place outside. Her head twitched slightly in their direction, and she began to close her mouth slowly. Chris called my name from upstairs, obviously concerned. I had turned to see him with his wife Rebecca hurrying down the steps. When I turned back to the window, Lynn was gone. The only sign she'd been there at all was the 2 streaks of drool dripping down the glass. You want to read the rest?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I tried to is that where you started? I tried to explain. Okay. It's not that says it all. I tried explaining to Chris and Rebecca about waking up to see Lynn watching me through their window. They were skeptical. Who wouldn't be? Chris and I went outside to the spot in front of the window, but there was no footprints in the dirt, just a slight indent. Animal probably, Chris guessed, but I didn't argue. He and Rebecca assumed I dreamt the entire episode, but they didn't understand, and I was too tired to explain it to them. I called out of work that day and turned my cell off. I didn't want to face Lynn. Just talking to her was too much for me at that point. I really started to believe something was irreversibly wrong with her, that no matter what promises she had made, we'd never be the same again. The thought saddened me to my core. I cried most of the morning. By noon, I figured I was ready to confront her, give her one last chance to explain herself. I could at least give her that after 6 years, I told myself. I turned my phone on, saw the dozens of texts she sent, all from a seemingly concerned wife. Can we talk? I love you. Please call me. I'm really worried. Can you answer? Just come home. And more of the same. All the texts telling me she loved me and she wanted me home, how worried she was. Not a damn one addressing the crazy shit she pulled, like she hadn't been acting like a character from a Stephen King book. Even her texts were different. She normally texted novels just to tell me to pick up a loaf of bread. You think she'd have more to say to me after her bizarre shenanigans. I know it probably seems childish to some of you who are miles away from the situation, but if you saw the way Lynn had looked at me, how she scampered away on all fours like some wild animal, grinning at me from inside the closet like a lunatic, then you would find my reaction was warranted. I ended up staying with Chris and Rebecca for another night. I didn't wake up yesterday until afternoon, and thankfully I didn't see Lynn's face watching me through the window. I don't want to pry because it's not my place, but is this a fight something that can be mended? Rebecca asked. She made both of us a sandwich for lunch, and I knew she wanted to breach the subject without seeming to be nosy. I don't know, she's like a different person, I said. Choosing my words carefully, I still wasn't ready for her or Chris to know the full extent of the batshit craziness I had been dealing with. People change, Ben, but she's still the same woman you married. Maybe you both just need to talk through your issues. Whatever's going on, I'm sure it can be fixed, she said, ever the pacemaker. Or peacemaker, not pacemaker. Pacemaker is a heart thing. Peacemaker. I think it's beyond that now. I don't think talking would help. I don't trust her, I said. The words stung in my heart. I missed and loved my wife, but how could I live with someone like that? Living in constant fear didn't sound too appealing. Lynn loves you and has to be absolutely crushed, she said. I don't know about that, I said. Well, she certainly seemed to like it to me. I've never seen her so upset, so much unlike the Lynn I know, Rebecca said, shaking her head sadly. It took a full minute for her words to really sink in. When they did, I felt dread worming its way through my skin. Wait, what do you mean you saw her? You saw Lynn? I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Rebecca nodded casually as if that wasn't nightmare fuel. Maybe for her it wasn't. She stopped by this morning just after Chris left for work, she said, cleaning the plates from the table. I didn't see her car though. Maybe she took an Uber or something. Beck, what did she say? Did she come inside? I asked, sweat starting to break out on my forehead. I began looking around, examining corners as through a predator lurked behind them. No, she just asked if you were awake yet, and I said that you weren't. I asked if she wanted me to wake you, but she said no, just let you sleep. She said as she would wash the dishes. That's all? She didn't say anything else, I asked. No, she looked awful though, like she hadn't slept in days. I think you should call her. I got up from the table and thanked Rebecca for lunch. I felt a little bit better at the knowledge that she at least hadn't come inside. Still, I needed to double check that the doors were locked. I sat for a while trying to figure out what to do next. I didn't want to go home, but I felt that I owed it to Lynn to help her if I could. Hadn't I sworn an oath to love her and honor her through sickness and in health? Clearly, she was very sick. If she was sick, which I truly believe she was, I had to try to get her help she needed. But I didn't even know where to start. I didn't want to call the police, and besides, what the hell was I going to say to them? That my wife was peeking at me, that she was being creepy. As bizarre as she had been, she still hadn't committed any crime. Not yet, anyway. The police would have probably said that I was overreacting, but this wasn't some prank. It felt wrong, dangerous even. Like something sinister lurked beneath her smile. I knew as her husband I was well within my rights to have her committed, but what if she simply acted normal in their presence? She'd obviously been able to fool Rebecca into thinking she was just a concerned wife. As long as the doctors didn't find her a danger to herself or others, they'd have no choice but to release her after 72 hours. I felt lost and overwhelmed. So I did what any husband in my position would do. I called her mother. This part's the funniest part. I don't know why. I didn't want to, believe me. Her mother, Mary Ann, and I were never on the best terms. We never fought or anything like that. She just wasn't a very warm person and wasn't really easy to get along with. She hardly ever smiled, and when she did, only her lips would move into a thin-lipped smile, leaving her eyes as blank as before. She gave off this aura that felt like she was permanently on the offensive. I'd only met her twice, and both times were such short visits. I got the impression that she didn't approve of me for her daughter. Lynn always ushered us out quickly. That's really hard to say. Ushered us out quickly. And as she didn't want me to feel uncomfortable, which I was grateful for. Being in her mother's company felt almost unbearable, like walking on glass. I was glad that when we moved 3 states away, so we didn't have to see her often. I was happy to avoid the woman, but I needed her help. I really didn't want to talk to her at all, but I had to talk to someone who knew Lynn better than I did. So I grit my teeth and did what I had to. Yes, she answered, sounding irritated. Marianne, it's me, Ben. Do you have a minute to talk? I asked. I could hear her cluck her tongue in irritation. I'm in the middle of writing some checks, but if you insist, I suppose I can spare a moment. What is it that you want to discuss, Benjamin? She said, coolly? ? It's about Lynn. She's been acting strangely, and I was wondering if you had any idea whether there was something. I was quickly interrupted. It's a bit difficult to follow your rambling, Benjamin. What is it that you want from me? She asked. I could almost see her standing there in her thin sweater and slacks, tapping her fingernails impatiently on the table. I want to know if you've ever noticed any odd behavior, or possibly any mental health issues, I asked. There was a long, uncomfortable pause that I couldn't tell was because she was thinking or something else. Finally, after a few seconds, she spoke. I'm not sure if this is one of your jokes, Benjamin, but if so, I don't find the humor in it. Now, I do have business to attend to, as I've said, so if you don't mind, she said, but I cut her off before she can get rid of me. Marianne, it's not a joke. I'm sincerely concerned about Lynn's mental health. Her behavior has been very erratic lately. I'm very worried about her, and I figured as her mother you would be as well, I said in frustration, evident in my voice. If you're truly concerned, then I suggest you get health professionals involved. I don't know what you expect of me, she snapped. I could tell that she was seconds away from hanging up for some reason. I was desperate to not let her. I had a feeling that she knew a lot more than she was letting on. Please, if not for me, do it for Lynn, I tried. I heard a faint, shaky intake of breath, but as she was trying to hold her steely persona together but failing. Marianne, I started. Benjamin, I don't know what to tell you. My only advice would be to seek professional help. Do not call here again. Goodbye. I tried to call out to her, but she hung up. I tried to wrap my head around the call and her refusal to help me. Even if she didn't like me, why wouldn't she want to help her own daughter? I couldn't understand that. I tried to replay the conversation, desperate to find something I missed. After a while, I almost gave up until I remembered her last words to me. Seek professional help, she said, those last words with a bit of urgency. I could have just been grasping at straws, but no, I was sure her voice had changed ever so slightly when she said that, as if they were very important. What had she meant? I assumed she'd been referring to medical professionals, but maybe she was referring to someone else. Someone that she didn't, for some reason, feel comfortable saying directly, or maybe I was just desperate.
Get a priest!
Yeah, that's what it definitely feels like. I waited for Chris to get home, and after a very long, exhausting conversation with him and Rebecca, I convinced them that Lynn truly needed psychiatric help. I didn't tell them everything. I wasn't prepared to go into it yet, but I told them about our last encounter, how she'd been in the bathroom peeking at me from the closet. They were obviously shocked, but thankfully they believed me. They, too, just wanted to help her. Still, they didn't think it was all that serious. Weird, maybe, but not dangerous. They kept saying to me that Lynn had been playing some sort of weird joke, maybe for YouTube. Rebecca offered, if only half-heartedly. Chris didn't think we should involve the police just yet. He offered instead to go with me, and I readily accepted. He reasoned that calmly talking to her, trying to coax her into going willingly was the best recourse. I agreed to do it his way. At least I wouldn't be going into that house alone. We drove over this morning, just after breakfast. There was no way I was going at night. When we pulled into the driveway, my stomach began doing somersaults. Her car wasn't there, but I still didn't let my guard down. The front door was ajar, and just for a split second, I thought we'd seen her eyes through the gap. I was shaking and starting to sweat. Chris, however, was fine. He waited for me to open the door, his hands in his pockets like he was going on a stroll through the park. I envied his ignorance. I pushed the door open and was immediately hit with the stench of rot. Chris smelled it too. He walked up to the house behind me with his nose scrunched up. What do you guys use to clean the floors around here? Chris mumbled. Shut up, I said, my eyes darting around as signs for Lynn. The house was deadly quiet and dark despite being 10 in the morning. All the curtains were closed up tight, refusing to allow any sunlight inside. If I hadn't left it just 2 days prior, I have thought the house had to be abandoned. We moved around each room, carefully checking any place that she might hide, occasionally calling her name. Why? Why the fuck are you looking under the couch? Chris asked eventually. Aren't you looking for your wife? He was looking at me like I was a moron. Let's just go upstairs, I whispered. He shook his head but followed me up the stairs to check the bathroom and spare bedroom. On the way up, my shoes crunched over pieces of glass that looked to be littered over the last few steps. I noticed that one of Lynn and my wedding portraits that hung on the wall along the staircase had been smashed. The frame hung crookedly. All the glass removed. I stared at the picture, a lump forming in my throat. We had taken the photo just after leaving the church, saying our vows. She looked so beautiful in her white gown. I looked at Lynn's beautiful face. I never dreamed her face would ever be a source of terror for me. I was hesitant to go back to the bathroom. That's not what that says. I was hesitant to go into the bathroom, my fear from that night coming back to me all at once. Chris noticed and offered to go in himself, but I couldn't let him do that. So we walked in together, checking the closet and the shower. The bathroom looked as if it hadn't been touched since the night I left. I don't think she's here, Ben. Why don't you pack some clothes? We'll try coming back tomorrow or something, Chris said. I nodded and went into the bedroom and shoved some clothes into a duffel bag. When I checked inside our closet, I came across a source of the smell and gagged. Chris took one look and lost all color in his face. He had to go stand by the stairs to get away from the sight and smell. I gazed down in shock of what lay inside my bedroom closet. Soaking in the rug were at least a dozen eyeballs, all carefully laid out in pairs. Some were as large as a quarter, while others were as tiny as a marble. I stared down at the eyes she collected from the small animals, and I wondered how she got in them, and shuddered at the thought. Man, I thought I had a bout with Becca's shoe addiction, but fuck me, your wife's in here collecting eyeballs, Chris said, gagging. Ben, I think we should go, he called from the hall. I'm getting nauseous. That's just gross. Like, I can't. Ugh. All right, I grabbed my duffel and shut the closet door on my new nightmare. I stepped out into the hall and took a deep breath of air. I could taste the rot on my tongue, and I couldn't help but gag. Who the fuck lines eyeballs in their closet like that? Chris mumbled. I tried to tell you that she needed help, I said. She doesn't need help, Ben. She needs an exorcist, he said. You coming or what?
Literally.
I can't stand the smell. His word died in his throat, and his eyes grew wider with fear. I didn't ask him why. I could feel it. Someone was watching me, and I didn't think it was the eyes in the closet. I turned around, my eyes slowly scanning the bedroom. Christ, I whispered, as I finally saw what we'd missed. Under the bed, curled up on her side, watching us with excitement of a kid on Christmas morning, was my wife. She held her hands together just under her chin, and they were shaking eagerly. Now that she knew she'd been found, I could hear the quiet noises she was making. A sort of hiccuping sound in her throat, as if the excitement was just too much for her. It was unnerving to say the least. Wide eyes, that same huge smile. Everything in me told me to run, but I forced it away. This was my wife. No matter how twisted she was still the woman I married. I had to help her. Lynn, I said softly. She didn't respond, but her head bobbed back and forth in two quick little movements as if she were nodding. Baby, I just want to help. Okay, can you let me do that? I asked. I had taken a single step forward, approaching her like some kind of dangerous animal. I love you, Lynn, I said softly, taking another step closer. She let a tiny moan escape her wide open mouth, and I had to resist the urge to run. Her shoulders were starting to quiver, and her eyes grew as large as saucers. I crouched down, but I could see her better, and immediately saw the blood. Her hands were covered in it. They trembled more the closer I got, as if she's been barely able to contain herself. Lynn, are you hurt? Are you bleeding? I said. She bobbed her head again, and her bloody fingers moving up and down as if playing an invisible piano. They occasionally grazed her chin, leaving smears of blood on her skin. I wanted to recoil in disgust. The smell that was coming off of her was revolting. I could feel the vomit trying to climb up my throat. Her lips were dry and stretched thin, blood seeping between the cracks. I knew she wouldn't come out on her own, but I didn't want to leave her in the state she was in. I scooted closer and reached out to her. The excited hiccuping sounds got louder and her hands shook, fingers flexing. It was then I could see the blood oozing from between her fingers. Oh my God, Lynn, you're bleeding, I said instinctively. I reached out to take her hand, but before I could even touch her, her hand sprang out towards me. A sharp pain shot through my arm, and I fell back on my ass. My arms burned, but I couldn't see the blood dripping down onto the carpet. I I looked back at her in shock and saw her grinning madly. Her fingers clutched a large shard of glass. "You all right in there?" Chris asked from behind me. I turned my head slightly and nodded to him, cradling my arm to my chest. When I turned back to face Lynn, I saw that her focus had shifted. She wasn't looking at me anymore, and she wasn't smiling anymore either. She was staring past me, her eyes glaring at Chris the way a hungry lion might stare at an antelope. Her mouth was still hanging open, but it was twisted into a snarl. I got to my feet and began walking backwards down the hall, afraid to take my eyes off of her. "Are you bleeding?" Chris asked. The moment the words left my mouth, Lynn started fast scooting out from under the bed, the glass shard still in her fist. "Chris, run, go," I yelled. He must have been too afraid to move because a second later I felt my back bump into him. He was still standing at the top of the stairs staring at the horror that was my wife. Lynn had crawled completely out of from under the bed and stood in the bedroom doorway, her face twisted in rage. Her whole body was visibly tense. Blood ran down her fingers onto the floor. "Jesus, Lynn," he said, "you playing hide and seek?" I reached back and pushed him towards the steps. "Move your ass, Chris," I said quietly but firmly as I could. Lynn bobbed her head in a fast, sharp motions and began to grin, stretching her mouth open and wider and wider so that her chin seemed to touch her chest. I don't know why it was so hard to read right there. I heard Chris mutter a prayer, and then he was running down the stairs. I stood at the top of the steps, stuck between the love for a woman who clearly needed serious help and self-preservation. "I only want to help," I said, choking back tears. Her eyes focused on me once again as she slowly lifted the glass, holding it out in front of her, and she started sprinting towards me, grinning with utter excitement. Thankfully, my body took over and I flew down the stairs, skipping 2 or 3 at a time. I made it to the front door before I felt her leap onto my back, wrapping her arms around my neck, her open mouth next to my ear so that I could hear those terrible hiccuping sounds up close. I shook her off me, knocking her on the floor. I felt a searing pain in my back as she went, but I tore open the front door and bolted to my car. Chris was standing in the front yard, talking on the phone with the police. I didn't say a word. I just ran to my car and jumped in. Chris took the hint and followed me, still on the line with 911. I watched the rearview mirror, sure I'd see her there, running after us, but I never did. I went straight to the ER and got 11 stitches in my arm and 3 on my back. The police asked a lot of questions and went back to the house to do a search of course, but Lynn wasn't there. They advised me to stay with a friend or relative for a while and to file a restraining order as soon as I could, but none of those things would matter. Somehow I just knew. I dropped Chris off at home and went to a motel an hour away. I wanted to put as much distance between me and Lynn as I could. This is where I had been for the last 4 hours. I thought maybe the police would find her, but maybe they'd get her help she desperately needs. But now I don't think so, because 40 minutes ago I got a text from an unknown number. Just 3 words: "I found you," and a picture attached. The picture was dark and grainy, but I instantly knew what it was. There was no mistaking my wife's eye. I started typing out immediately after. I don't know what to do. I'm alone and scared, but I can't help but feel I'm being watched.
Nightmare fuel. Literal nightmare fuel.
Yeah. So I guess my question is that really her?
I don't know.
Because, like, at first she was acting like she didn't know what he was talking about. So I was thinking, okay, maybe it's a mimic. Yeah. But where did she actually go? Because her car wasn't there. Mm-hmm. What if she was at work or something and that was, like, a mimic?
We need a part 2.
Yeah.
We need to find out what happens. I need to know.
But, yeah. That is the scariest thing I've ever read.
I know, same. Same. Just the image that I have in my head is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and then whenever I was, like, picturing it, I was picturing it, like, around my house. Mm-hmm. Like, in my house. And I'm like, I don't like this. 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 Don't like this.
Not at all.
Yeah. So.
Terrifying.
Scary.
Definitely the scariest one I've read.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so scary.
It is.
So we've only read 2, but we're at 50 minutes. You want to keep going, or do you?
You have another short one, don't you?
Yeah. It has. Okay, I don't know what's up with me and lights, but another one is about another light. How long is the Jolly Roger one? Is it also long? Yeah, we could always do like another episode and add that one to the other one. Like not today, but like for like in the future. Mm-hmm. But this next one is called The Front Porch Light. And I found this one on Creepypastas website. Yeah. So here we go. Okay. I woke up sweaty and in a daze. Most nights this is normal for me, but not tonight. Something about my bedroom was odd. Something wasn't right. I felt around next to me and grabbed my phone and checked the time. It's midnight. 7 more hours of sleep before I gotta get up and get ready for work. I looked over the open door and saw the faint yellow porch light that emanates through our cheap, slightly cracked blinds next to the front door. I dropped my phone back to its place and laid my head back down, letting out a heavy sigh and turning to my wife, who's sleeping soundly next to me, her back facing me. I gently run my fingers down her spine for comfort to try to get my sleep going once more. I woke up sweaty and in a daze again. I felt a cough coming in and did my best to suppress it as to not wake my wife, but the dryness in my throat made it difficult. I stood and walked through the open door and into the kitchen. I didn't bother to turn on any of the lights as the porch lights were enough to illuminate my way. My apartment was small, only 2 bedrooms and one bath big, and without having children of our own, it was just easy to navigate with my adjusted eyes. I grabbed a cup from the cabinet and poured myself some water. As I poured and listened to the sound of my cup being filled, I suddenly realized that the entire apartment was quiet. I stopped pouring and looked over to the window next to the door. The light still penetrated through, but a sense of suspicion all but forced me to peek through the blinds. I walked over and lifted a single blind. It was foggy. The cars normally parked out in front were invisible, but I couldn't make out a single thing except for some black asphalt maybe 10 feet ahead. This fog was dense and looked stained from the porch light. I let the single blind drop back into its place and turned to the kitchen again. I took 2 steps when I saw part of the light that shone on the floor be disturbed. Something ran past, something I didn't see or notice earlier. A single black line now broke that even light, and it was clearly standing still now. No.
Nope. Absolutely not.
I turned again, and with my adrenaline now running, I slowly but shakily checked the doorknob and top lock, making sure they're both secure. I stood still now as well, hoping that whatever stood behind my door left, or at least gave me the ease of knowing that it's actually something mundane. A minute passes and nothing changes. My eyes were still locked onto the black shadow on the floor, with keeping my peripheral vision on the window. I slowly and quietly went back into the room. At this point, I had so much fear of breaking eye contact with the shadow, but I didn't know what to do. I sat on the edge of my bed, gave me a perfect view of the shadow on the floor, and used my left hand to reach over, feel for my wife. Thankfully, she's still asleep. I sat and watched for a long time. I don't actually know how much time had passed, but it was enough to tire me. My eyes were burning and each blink reminded me that I wasn't going to last much longer like this. Blink, yawn, blink. I woke up sweaty and dazed. I immediately threw myself to my feet and looked around. My heart was beating fast and saw that the shadow on the floor was gone. I looked over to my wife, and there she was, still asleep, peaceful and beautiful. I managed to get my heart rate down, but thinking to myself how vivid and strange that nightmare was. I sat back on the bed and felt around for my phone and checked the time. It's midnight. That can't be right. Was it daylight savings? My throat was dry, so I decided to grab some water from the kitchen. I passed the yellow light again and saw the same cup of water I'd forgotten about in my nightmare, sitting right there on the counter, exactly where I left it. Dread now washed over me, and I began to sweat even more than I already was. Am I still in my nightmare? No. The sweat beating down my cheek and my irritating dry throat felt too real, if that's the case. I closed my eyes shut and tightly held them together while my mind raced. This means that whatever stood on my front porch was probably still there. I didn't want to open them and see its shadowy presence on the floor, yet if this was real, I need to make sure my wife was safe. I took a deep breath in and opened them. No shadow. I let my breath go and made my way back to the bedroom. I crawled onto the bed and shook my wife's shoulder and whispered her name. She didn't respond. She had always been a heavy sleeper, so it was going to take a little more than that, but I also didn't want to scare her awake either. On my second attempt, I heard knocking. It was faint but clear. I felt my heart drop, and I closed my eyes again, leaving my hand hovering over my wife. Then it spoke. Hello, is anyone home? No. No, I just don't answer. The voice was feminine, and it spoke with emotion, like a scared person asking if a killer was hiding in the basement in a horror movie. The words echoed throughout the apartment. I turned and slowly made my way back to the front door. If it wasn't a nightmare, then I know the locks are secure, yet the dread of doubting myself won, and I started shaking with fear. I looked over to the lit floor, and didn't see the shadowy line that previously split the light. Instead, it was much smaller and contained in self to the top portion of the lit floor. I took some more deep breaths and calmed myself enough to say, fuck it, and check what was looming right outside my door. What I saw made no sense. Outside, there was a dense fog remained. Right on the edge of the black asphalt where my visibility ended was a nude female body. It stood still, and the porch light still gave enough to see that it was missing its head. What?
Oh? Okay.
I took a step back and made quite a bit of noise when I accidentally kicked the coffee table that was nearby. My breathing became more intense, and now I had a piercing headache. But I took another look to see if it wasn't a mannequin. It wasn't. I could see that there were dark streaks running down its breast and down its navel. I looked like it stood perfectly still, but noticed that it swayed ever so slightly. When examining it, I tried to see if there was anything else out there that could make sense of what I was seeing, but there was nothing. Before dropping the blind, I heard a very low humming, something that I hadn't noticed before. Was it there the whole time? Or did it just now start? I scanned their surroundings again, and when I looked further up, I saw its head. It was floating right above me, inches away from my front door and facing it. The mouth was agape with its eyes missing. Its hair flowed down where the neck ends were the same black streaks as the body. I was frozen in place. Was this what was bothering me this whole time? Staring right at the floating head, it began to speak to me. Hello, could you come outside, please? No, part of the head moved, not even its mouth. At this point, I didn't care anymore. I ran back to the bed and shook my wife, yelling her name. I shook and shook, but she remained, sleeping peacefully. I grabbed her by the chin and turned her face toward me. She looked fine, and was still breathing like normal. Good, at least I didn't have bang, 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 bang. The sounds of violent knocking rattled my head again, and I clasped my ears. I jumped out of bed and ran towards the window. I opened the blinds wider and less inconspicuous this time to get a better look, and saw that the feverishly stained fog had rolled back a little, along with a fleet of headless bodies. Instead of the single one, they were now numerous. They varied in shapes and sizes, and some darker than the others. Some stood on the ground and others floated above, some closer and some farther, some lower and some higher. They surrounded me in my now god-forsaken apartment. The floating head remained alone, still facing my front door. I stared at it and waited for it to do something. Soon, it started viciously slamming itself against the door, then speaking again. Bang, bang, bang. Can you come outside, please? Bang, bang. This time, it came from behind me. I quickly turned and saw a figure standing outside my bedroom window, right there where I sleep. Running towards the window, I realized that there was a yellowish light that shone outside, same as the front porch. I stopped and checked the spare room, same light outside. Looking through the spare window, I saw a dark-skinned body floating stiff as a board, but floating slowly and eerily towards the window. I ran back to my bedroom, and my heart stopped for a second. Looking up upon the bed, I saw that my wife was missing. I cried and shouted her name, but never received an answer. I ran through the apartment, but she wasn't there. I sat on the bed and cried. I smacked my head a couple times out of frustration when the violent knocking came back again. This time it came from every window in the apartment, every single one. I screamed and covered my ears and shut my eyes tightly to try and drown out the horrifying sounds. Then I heard my wife. Babe, hello? I opened my eyes and looked up but didn't see her. Babe, you sound distressed. Why don't you come outside? No.
Absolutely not.
Why did she get outside?
Exactly.
She was there. That would scare me. That just go back to sleep.
Shiver me timbers.
Oh my god. Okay. Creepypastas always scare me.
I know.
But I love them.
Same.
But yeah. Yeah. I wonder if we could find pictures for any of these.
I know.
I was thinking that. But, yeah. So we're going to end on that note because it's been an hour and we've both been reading a lot. Yes. My mouth is just...
My voice was, almost gone. I was like, you can read the rest of it because I'm, gone.
That's okay. So if you guys would love to, please follow, share, comment, and message or direct message our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Dreadfully Twisted Podcast. And also, did you know that TikTok is back on the Google Play Store, so it's not banned anymore, I don't think.
Woo!
It's back on the Google Play Store, so you can download it now.
So all those people who bought phones for thousands of dollars are really kicking it.
Yep. So you can go all there to at Dreadfully Twisted Podcast. We also have a group page on Facebook. It's called Dreadfully Twisted Podcast Discussion Group.
Easy.
You can comment on there. post on there for, like, if you want to send us your stories, true crime or paranormal, or recommend cases or topics to cover. You can also email us. Our email address is dreadfullytwistedpodcast@gmail.com, or you can also go onto our Reddit page, r/dreadfullytwistedpod. You can also rate the podcast page or like it. If you do rate it, please rate us 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. You can also download and comment on each episode wherever you listen to podcasts on. Like YouTube, you can comment on it, but if you want to comment, please leave nice comments, not bad comments, because we are trying our best here.
Yes.
We are funny, and if you don't like it, then don't say anything. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything. Thank you. And I guess tequila speaks too.
Yeah, tequila speaks.
Because people leave weird.
Those are the only comments we get.
Ones that don't make sense. But yeah, so you can go there. I know on Spotify you can, if you download the episodes, that does help us out. And another thing that I just want to say before we end here, please share our podcast with family and friends. It really helps the podcast get out there and helps us stay relevant. We do not have money to do marketing for the podcast, so the only way we can get the podcast out there is if you share it and let other people know. So if you can help us, get the podcast out there, that would be great. Yes. Because we really rely on you guys to help us have it grow. So yeah.
We love you.
We love you. And stay positive. Look out for your friends. Don't be like the bad people we talk about.
Yes, please.
And we will see you guys next week for something probably true crimey, I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I said I was going to do the Slenderman killings this week, and I didn't, so I'm sorry.
That's okay. It'll be coming, though.
It will be coming eventually. I just haven't had time.
Yeah.
Work is kicking my butt. Let me just say that. I cannot wait till the person that I'm covering for gets back, because I'm drowning at work. But yeah. So we will see you guys next week. Please keep listening. We love you. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate all of you followers, all of you subscribers, all of you sharing the podcast. We love you so much. Please keep listening to us. I know we can't speak, but yeah, we're funny. So yeah, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.